All right. This is going to be a tale of two shows with me and T. We spent the last 15 minutes or so talking about it. We both jumped in way early. So let's go into it. I'm going to throw it to you with saying this in the beginning. Again, the right opener with Half Step.
Yeah. Again, I think both nights they nailed the opener for sure. And again, it was paced really well. I've always loved the end jam, once we get through the song and you get into the end jam. And I thought tonight was just like beautiful. It's such a great, and it's a great song. Granted, it's like, Mississippi has whatever, but it's a great song at the Gorge. Like it just fits that
Right.
setting so perfectly. And I think we'll talk about a few of those songs tonight fit the setting very well and perfectly. And this was a great way to open the show.
Oh,
I agree.
damn it. The banner.
Oh, the banner. There it is.
All right. So what I'm going to say is right off the bat, Clemente makes his presence known. He's playing this funky riff, a little New Orleans for his solo and half step. And out of the six, this was my favorite. It seemed to me like they were picking up the conversation from the night before with this opener.
Yeah, it did. It felt like it did feel sort of like that continuation. I will say, like we talked about a little bit backstage, whereas last night's first set kind of felt like we were felt a little bit faster pace, felt a little bit more. Every song kind of had an upper tempo to it and kind of a faster pace. Tonight's first set was a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical.
Right.
A little
That's
bit
where I
more.
was going to go. They lean into the wake of the flood songs to open, and you know what I've said about it. But for me, it's just right here. Do you know the story behind Here Comes Sunshine?
Yes, but you can
All
go
right.
ahead.
Hunter was a little kid in a flood in Washington State back in 1949. So the lyrics are a true story of his life. And I'm just going to say I should be kinder to the song, probably, because it just, the combo of those two just was so perfect. Laid back. The gorge, what is it? It's laid back. You're on a mountain or whatever it is. You're in a gorge, I guess.
Exactly. You've got the scenery again. The scenery around you is beautiful.
Just
it's like,
looking, yeah. Can you imagine standing? I've never been there, but standing on that hill and just looking around it.
well, that's how I felt during, and we'll talk about it when we get to it, but that's how I felt during Friend of the Devil. Like, we'll talk about that when we get to it, but I thought that was a perfect song for that moment and where they were. As for Here Comes Sunshine, I mean, I know how I always love that song. Just, I was in the bust out in Arizona when it happened, when they brought it back in. My first
Right.
dog,
93, right?
yeah,
93?
yeah. 93, I think it was 94,
Or 92, one of the two,
one of the
something
two.
like that.
Drove through a hellish snowstorm to get to Arizona for that show anyway, and made it in.
Did you drive through the pass? I got locked out of trying to drive through Durango once to get down there to see. It was 94 though. And when we drove back, it was snowed in. So we had to drive all the way down to Santa Fe and drive all the way back up in order to get through. The Taos Pass was closed too because of snow.
Now, I
There's
always
your
remember
geography
driving
lesson.
through the petrified forest, like by the petrified forest area. There was 4 of us in a geostorm. Those old geos, like that old green geostorm, just like terrified us. It's funny. So many times I travel for the dead, like off topic here, but like in '92, we left the dorms in Fort Collins to drive to Oakland for the Chinese New Year shows. Got stuck in Tahoe in one of the worst blizzards ever in my buddy's VW bus. Like, had to put chains on it. Like, it was never easy, but the reward was always the show, right? Anyway, with the Here Comes Sunshine from tonight, as I digress, there's just, it always has a place in my heart. My very first dog that I ever had, my Springer Spaniel, when I was a little kid, was named Sunshine. So, like, I've always had a connection to this song. I've always loved this song so much. So I thought tonight, Mayer was on fire again, leading the band through it. Him and Clemente had that back and forth again, where you're just like,
I said, I should be kinder.
It's just such a great thing. And I will say too, one of the other themes, I know we talked like last night, the MVP I thought was Mayer. Tonight, I almost think the MVP was O'Teal, especially in that first set. Like, the bass was just very there in a lot of the songs.
You want to play a game with me for the next 3 shows for the rest of it? Only on the bigger songs. Let's play. Are they going to do it again? Will we get a half step again?
Yes.
Okay, how about a Here Comes
It's 3
Sunshine?
nights. I mean, how many repeats
Yeah.
did we get this weekend from Boulder? 2?
Scarlet
So
and One tonight, and I'm losing it off the top of my head, but it's
so
probably in
there's a
my notes
lot.
later.
I think a lot of Boulder will be obviously back on the table. And again, I think there'll be a few songs from here that come back too. I don't think we've heard the last Telio. I definitely don't think we've heard the last Althea because those are kind of their standards. I think we'll get another Cumberland because that's just that song
Oh
rips
yeah.
right now. So I think there's a few that'll come back.
All right. All right. So next time you see me, we got more of that sweaty backroom organ from Chimente, and
Yep.
we've said more, we've spilled more than enough ink about Mayer being the owner of a lot of those pig tunes. And again tonight, it's always short, it's compact, the solos are tight, you know, which is what more can you really, I know everybody wants the jams forever, but for me, I like that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And last night we didn't get that bluesy Mayer first set song as we talked about. Tonight we got it with that. It was a little bit more compact. I thought it was a little bit quicker of a version. Didn't quite get into some of those bluesy jams we've gotten from him before, but it was that setup song for him. Again, that Mayer feel that, it had that weird
Mhm.
jam in it, but I thought it was
They're
his
fine. You know what it is? And this tells me that we will see something again. They're still searching.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
still are. So, all right, then we get Lucy. She's been missing since North Carolina. They had put her on milk cartons, from what I heard. She had been gone so long.
It's crazy, right? Like only the second one in 26 shows. Is that where we're at
Yeah.
now? That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, and Mayer decided to push it a little with some great rhythm work that broke into a nice little groove. And then the next break, O'Teal got in on the
Yep.
action and he took a quasi solo, ran it through for 16 bars or whatever.
Yep. And I think it was one of those fun songs. The crowd was really into it, when they kept showing it, like it was a very dancey, crowdy song. It was a good summer concert song, right? Like it fit the place and the moment and the momentum very well. And again, that the feeling of this set not really being that up tempo pace of last night, this sort of was
Mhm.
in that same zone of tonight's. It was
They
a
kind of
great,
fell into a
yeah,
slower groove. And
very
then
much,
came
yeah.
out with Friend of the Devil. What I will say about Friend of the Devil is the economy of some of Mayer's solos is refreshing in a world of shredders, you know?
Very. And I think we've talked about it, the slow jams. Some of the slow, bigger jams that have been in this tour aren't the raging rippers, peak drop
Mhm.
jams. They're these like really
Right.
slow paced, methodically, really beautiful jams. And
The
tonight's friend, like I thought it was perfectly placed. I thought I put in my notes, like this is where you are and the location matters so much in this moment. I mean, it's the perfect song to sit down, burn one down, enjoy the scenery, and just
right.
take in where you are. And it's the
Uh,
perfect song for that. Looking out over where the gorge is, like it was just, and they hit it, like they hit it
uh,
so well. It was such a great version story of that song.
thoughtful.
Yeah,
Thoughtful was my note placement in the solo, and it true. It may be slower, right, than some bands or what the Grateful Dead used to do, but in the end, this is up for debate. But I think it's harder to play slow at the end of the day than it is to shred.
I agree. And play that sort of that methodical feel that like, and not make it feel too institutionalized or conformist with that
Right.
jam, with it being slow, but actually have some room in there to create and make it into something special in those spaces with it. And this was just one of those moments where it was beautiful. And it, again, like I used to always say to my buddies when we were pre-show at a dead, like that anticipation before they walk on stage and you're so excited for them to come out and start tuning. That moment, I'd always look at my buddy and be like, there's no place on the face of the earth that I would rather be right now than right here
Right.
getting ready for a Dead show. And that this friend of just reminded me of that. Like all those people at the Gorge, that's the one place you wanted to be tonight in
Right.
that moment watching that. So it was beautiful.
The only thing older than music is tuning up.
That's it.
There we go. Okay, so
Let's
let me
do
ask
this.
you, because I know that they love each other. What makes a song an MVP?
Well,
I'm
this is
giving
the
you a
one.
softball here. This is a softball.
Well, this I'm just gonna say this was interesting because I just saw a comment too from somebody with the slow Telio tonight. I was surprised, like bringing it back, like having these different ways to play it is what makes it so special. Like you can play it fast, you can play it slow, you can play it these different ways, and it still does the same thing, right? It still gets you to that same place. And I thought tonight's, I'm not always a huge fan of a slow Telio. Like I always liked the early set, like when it first started, and they used to kind of like play it a lot quicker. And
Open in the second set is where it lived for me for this tour.
yep, yep. So it was in an odd placement. It was an odd version of it, but it fit the set again, right? Like this
Right.
whole theme that we've been talking about, the slow pace of the set. So it was an interesting slow paced way to do it. And the seventh time around, we've talked about plateauing and like where they at. This was kind of a newer version and a new way of experimenting and creating on something that they've been doing so much. So
Right.
it still worked really well.
Right. Okay, so do we get another They Love Each Other?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. All right, so just the third sailor say this is where we're gonna totally go off the rails. It's just the third
This is
sailor
your
saying
song.
right. It's disappointing for me. Maybe one more in the city by the bay, but when I was young, my mother would drag me to the mall every weekend. And one time they had a shop that was the AV big screen shop, right? So I'm like, can I hang out in there instead of going to Hutzler's and looking at dresses? She's like, yeah. So they had a laser disc on and a big screen with Dead ahead, right? I watched from the mid first set, the acoustic set through the end. And the two things that stuck out to me were Sailor Sane and Space Fire. But it was the first one that got me. I was an AC/DC kid. I was a hard rock kid, and then this was radically different. And it spoke to me on this subconscious level. So within the next week, I went to the library. I checked out What a Long Strange Trip, Go to Heaven, and Skeletons from the Closet. And I've never looked back. So that's the origin story I promised everybody. And just, I don't know. It's just means so much to me because I was so young. I was 11 years old and I needed that. I had a pretty shitty life up to that point, and it was like there's people out there who are my people.
I'm heard. I can be heard. Someone else
Yeah,
has that.
right.
Yeah, I you know how I feel about it.
Yeah,
It's not my favorite. I am a fan of that fun transition
the
into
drop,
saying,
right?
yeah, the drop, and then like Bobby playing with the drop, and the
Yeah,
people, like the audience loves it, and it has the lyrics that typical kind of Bobby lyrics of like you kind of play along with it. You get the
right,
crowd into it. You get the crowd feeding back and forth. So
right.
I get it.
So make sure that you subscribe to get all kinds of great content like me talking about being 11. And we're going to start doing the fish things. There's only 3 more. Yes. There's only 3 more Dead and Company shows. T and I will be back next weekend, but on Tuesday, Fish starts. If you like Fish, we're doing the same thing for Fish. It might be a little different format. It might be 3 of us because Tim's going to be there. Tim's having a kid. That's weekend walk. So who knows who's going to show up. But anyway, next weekend he will have Amanda, my co-host from All That Jam, on with him for the weekend. So that will be fun. She's a smart cookie there, so he better watch out talking trash about Fish. And with that, we're going to jump into set 2. This
Mhm.
is something that I asked for. I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago, having a playing wheel playing, and we got it tonight, and it really was something special for me.
I
You
think
know,
whatever they're doing at intermission, whatever the set break juices that they're drinking, stay on it, because last night's sugary coming out of set break and tonight's playing wheel playing coming out of set break, just on
mm,
fire. Like just
right,
another level on how you want to start a second set.
right.
Like just,
And
and that transition in the wheel, it just makes so much sense. It's one of those
right,
songs that you're like, why don't they do this more? Like, why doesn't this happen more?
right.
Like, it's such a
It's
perfect
76.
segue
76
into it. Like, it
is
was
when the
just so
right.
good.
76 is when the Dead did it. Now, you mentioned O'Teal being MVP earlier, and let me just say I love how O'Teal immediately falls back in this and lets Mayer launch the song after the singing, Phil could have was a lot more aggressive. And I
Mhm.
think O'Teal gets what this band is doing, and he acts on it in that
Yeah.
moment. And Twilight at the Gorge. Can we talk about Twilight at the Gorge as playing drifts into low orbit, debating whether to hit space? I mean, it was fantastic. And what did they do? They landed in the wheel, which is like it's the all right. Here's my thing. It's the classic tale of a young man in playing, growing old in the wheel with the wisdom that is found with age. That it's like the story of the Sphinx or something told in Grateful Dead language.
Yep. I will say my only knock on it is in the wheel, the ending of like what I wish they would have done with the wheel was after the last verse, instead of getting into that.
Stay a little bit longer.
Yeah, that whole we've said it earlier in this was like it almost feels like they go a little Jimmy Buffett style or something like we
No,
said
they
before.
do.
This wasn't as bad, but I almost wish they after that's like just gone back into the jam.
But
Just
that's the
find
way
that
they
jam again and go
right,
back into the plan. Like you don't need to when wheel is in the middle of the song, in the middle of playing, and you know you're coming back out of it into playing, you
right,
don't need to like give me that sort of that ending to it. Like just
right,
sing the first two verses and then get back in, like get into that jam again and get back into the
right.
plan.
But I guess with me, it's baked into what the wheel is at this point.
Right.
So if you're going to
It's
get a
their wheel,
playing wheel,
right.
you're going to get a playing wheel playing. This is what you're gonna get there. So
But it's almost like, how they break up the other one with the verses, or they break up like Dark Star this time over 2 nights. It's almost like you don't need to get that wheel ending when you know you're gonna jam back out of it. Like
right,
just,
sure.
you know,
As the guys over at Fishnet, who we love, Scott Marks and crew, put little parentheses with an asterisk that says unfinished. And if you don't know, the joke is that they never finished a Down with Disease in 3.0 of Fish. So I don't know. I at one point I was like, why are they even bothering? They never
right. But it reminds me of like the fall forum show a couple years ago where they did the Tweezer LA Woman Tweezer, and you don't end LA Woman, you just kind of like go back and like you just jam back into the tweezer. Like you don't have to like end the song to get back into the other song. You just like let it flow because it's in the middle of the
right.
song. It's just like this continuous flow. And I thought this kind of disrupted that coming back into playing. Still awesome though. Glad they did it. Glad you got it. Like it was very cool.
Yep. So then we get Steven. O'Teal literally, again, MVP, threw himself into the Steven jam. And then
Yep.
Mayer just turned on the shred and like looked over at Bobby, and Bobby was over there shredding too. He's like, fuck you, I can do this too. It was out of
They
hand. That was
they
off the hook.
went at that Steven. Like they went at that whole these three songs, the Stephen the 11 and the Williams Hell. And I mean, we can talk about it, but I mean that it just ripped. I mean, and it was the perfect segue between them. Like it was just so perfect. And that, like I told you before, that the segue dropping into it, it's one of my favorite things to hear. Like that, it's so choice. I want to live inside that transitional jam. It's beautiful. It reminds me of when we were talking a couple weeks ago when Alan Arkin died, and we were talking about his quote from his biography with Madeline Kahn about, I want to be the music. I don't want to make the music. I don't want to hear the music. I want to
Right.
be the music and be that thing. And that's what this reminded me of, is like
Hmm.
living inside of
You
that
had a
moment.
moment. You
It
had a
was.
moment there.
It was really cool. Like I even went back and rewatched it during drums and rewatched that jam again because
Oh, you just all
I was
right.
like, did I hear that right? Like, was that really as beautiful as I thought it was? And man, that drop was just the red lights and Clemente.
Right.
It was amazing. It was
That
beautiful.
was the first complete suite since Riley. So, and only the third time of the whole tour. Every other time, the Steven and 11 have been split up, shown up, and we've gotten some really interesting stuff out of it. But I'm glad it came back one more time. Will the full suite show up again?
I don't think so.
I'm with you.
I don't think so. I
But
don't
I
think
think a
so.
Steven and an 11 will show up
Will
again.
come. Yeah, I agree. And I think in different, yes, coming in and out of drums or space or somewhere in there, definitely, but we won't get the suite like
Right.
that. And I don't think we'll get a moment like this again either. Ah!
Is that called Mike aside?
It's just too good. Wait, I gotta do it again. It's just too good. I love when he
Steph,
realizes no one can hear him, and then he's like, "Oh, fuck this."
right, Steph, I think what happened, Steph, she's one of my oldest friends, out there in the chat. I think what happened was the soundboard was somehow programmed. Somebody hit the wrong button and it just dropped Bobby's sound down. I don't think it was a failure of the mic or anything on stage. I think somebody behind the soundboard is probably getting tongue lashing tonight.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that too. Like, how angry is he gonna be after the show with that? Like, because those are those little hiccups, right? That like really piss you off. And for Bobby to hit it, we've talked about it 100 times on these after shows. For him to nail the lyrics every time in that song so well, and then to have the mic go out and people not be able to hear you, you might as well be flubbing the lyrics, right? Like, it sucks. It's gotta be so frustrating.
He's gonna have two copies of the same gift now. There's gonna be two Bobby swatting microphone gifts out there.
It was great. It was, yeah, it was so good.
It was fantastic. All right, so drums. Let's talk about this drums.
The
Jay
beginning.
on his kit, Otello on banjo bass, Mickey on xylophone, sounding like the Flecktones, right? For this nice 5-minute section, totally fantastic. And then a whole second thing followed by that on the Beast, with all of them on the Beast. I mean, maybe the best drums all tour.
Definitely. I would agree a whole, like, when they went into it, it was kind of that slow moment of walking off stage and everything, and Oteil getting the bass on, the banjo bass on. But man, that drop when they went into it, I was like, ooh, this is really fun. This is a lot better than starting with the beam and going into something. This was just like a full great.
When Jay stays on the kit, Jay stood up and then turned around and sat back down on the kit and was like, let's do this.
Yeah. Yep. It was awesome. It was
fantastic.
It was
best drums all tour. Beam is what it is. I like to somebody last night asked me, because I do the set list on Twitter, if Beam was something people were putting in set list now, and I'm like, nah, it was me being bored, having fun. So I know how long actual drums were compared to, so that's where that came from. And then Space, short and sweet, but it ended up where I think you and I both knew it was going to end up.
Yeah. We talked about it last night. Like, if you didn't get that second verse going into it tonight, into the drums tonight, you knew you were getting it coming out of Space tonight, and you could hear it as soon as they came out and started tinkering in Space. Immediately had the Dark Star vibe, immediately had that sound into it. And again, yeah, I mean,
so we're going to have a deep conversation. This was the first Dark Star that went over 2 nights. And I really am going to try to pin Matt down when he comes on July 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern.
6 Pacific.
On whether, if they do half of the other one and they do another half of the other one the next night, does it count twice for stats? Because that's basically what this boils down to for me. What are the stats on it? Because I'm running a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet guy.
Got to know my stats. How am I doing this?
Just to count it, because if you see that I put, yeah, it was. Don't worry, be slappy. That's right. I can get down with that. All right. So then we ended up with.
But I will say, Bobby's lyrics tonight were a little rough in spots. Like, he had a couple of times tonight where his voice was definitely giving him a little bit of trouble. But he fucking crushed the Lady in Velvet line. That just laid it out.
3 more. He's got 3 more shows to make it through. And thank you very much. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. I'll see you at Dick's.
But yeah, I will say, I thought Bobby, like, it's funny. Just when you think you're like, I don't know, can he make it another 3 shows? He pulls something like that out, and you're like, okay, he's doing good. Like, he's still got it. The voice is still there.
I'm gonna say this here: the first 2 sets of the Gorge, I felt were the best back-to-back sets, and this may have been the best 2 back-to-back shows. But when they hit Althea, it was the first thing the whole weekend that just felt off to me. I understand why it was there. We needed a Mayer tune. It's the obvious one. It's shown up after Space quite a few times over the years. I mean, it was good. It was
good.
It's the S word. It was the S word.
I know you were telling me backstage that you had the same opinion that Mandela T has here, that it was one of your favorite shows of the tour, and talking about that. And I had a few problems with tonight. I don't think it was my favorite show of tour. And one of those reasons is where this Althea kind of was placed tonight. I think it and the Telio were in odd places tonight, as we talked about. Like it was kind of odd ways that they did them tonight. And I mean, you're going to get Althea in different places, which I appreciate them changing it up and putting it in different areas. But it's just, even that one, eighth time, I feel like we've plateaued it, right? Like I feel like that was one of the ones too that just he rips.
You
it
know, you're
so
getting
hard.
another one. You are gonna. It's gonna bust. We had Althea at 8.5 for the over under. We are going to break it.
We are going to break it. Oh, for sure. Because again, it's his song. Like that is his bread and butter song. It's the mayor.
I bet
song.
it's the last night.
Yeah.
Still, it's going to be like a showcase. Hopefully, in the first set, maybe song penultimate in the first set would be fantastic for a nice long showcase.
Yeah. No.
If anybody's taking notes out there. All right. So I probably say this every time, but I feel like Stella was Garcia's most affecting ballad. You know, it was a song to a woman and a guitar in the same breath. And for Mayer, it comes around to a balance of understated and a little rips, flourishes, like he perfectly drops in there. He really understands, I think, what Garcia was going for with it.
Yep, I agree. And I think, I mean, we've talked about Stella every time they play it, how beautiful it is, how beautiful the story is, how great, the jam is tonight. Tonight, I thought, usually, we've talked about how perfect it is coming out of space a lot of times. Obviously, you weren't getting that tonight because of the Dark Star, and then they put the Althea in front of it to get to there. It just felt, I don't know, because it technically was the last song of the set, because Saturday night was the encore technically. So I thought the ending of this show was a little odd to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Stella isn't Morning Dew. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. Yes. Because you don't have that big release and that big,
right.
Yeah. And so it's kind of weird. Like you kind of got trapped, right? Because you come out of space into Dark Star, so you can't come out of space into Stella. So you put it somewhere else, but then you have the Althea in before it, which I don't know. It was just a weird Dark Star Althea. Stella was a weird way to end the show.
And word on the street was, I don't know if we mentioned this, that the taped over song last night that had Black Peter was Stella. That's what we've heard from different people. So, and we don't even get an FE tonight.
And so, but how interesting would that have been last night though? Like, it's still, that's an interesting thing that
if Stella had been done instead of Black Peter, would Black Peter have shown up tonight, or would it have been?
And what made Bobby want to go into that Black Peter? Because it was such a perfect.
He was possessed by Workingman's Dead.
Totally. He was playing the album, right? Like he was just like, I'm doing the album.
I remember recording this album, tracking it out, mastering it.
But it worked so well last night that I appreciated them doing that. And I don't know if Stella would have worked as well last night, but Stella tonight was in a weird place because of that. So I don't know if it was like, oh, we got to play it tonight or what. It felt kind of, it's always beautiful. It always is a great song. I mean, it always is going to do what it does, as we've talked about. And it's beautiful.
Let me ask you this. What if we switched Stella and Althea?
Well, see, I was thinking that, but could you come out of Dark Star into Stella? I guess you could.
You could meander. You could go. Dark Star is pliable enough. You could meander out of it.
You could jam that. You could have that fun jam into it. That would be interesting. I think, yes, flipping them, that would have probably
been. Althea's stronger as coming toward the end of the set as a rocker. So
right. And then it would have gone into on One More Saturday Night a little bit more too, because then you would have two bangers to kind of go out on, which is really what you're kind of looking for at the end of that show. Like it was kind of an up, down, like type thing where kind of.
So we're obviously going to get another One More Saturday Night. So let me ask you, is there any chance that it shows up as like a first set closer as opposed to an encore?
Yes. I think if Matt does what Matt likes to do, I would say open Saturday night with it, or open the second.
That's an answer.
Open the show with it Saturday. I think that would be awesome, right? And then go into an Althea, right? Like just do those two like that.
We're here, babe. We're here.
We're here. Saturday night. Let's do
San Francisco. All right. So that was fantastic. All right. So like we said, coming up Tuesday and Wednesday, come over if you like the fish. Check it out. We're going to be doing that next weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll be back for the end of the
Can you believe it? 29 shows. We're at 26, man. We got 3 left. It went fast.
29 is a lot, and it was gone quick. We got 23 for fish, so we aren't going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend.